hello everyone. Good evening, everyone who's joining me across from India, and good morning to everyone who is joining us from America. So, welcome to today's session. We're going to be having a focused one on one of the most underestimated yet changing parts of this whole application, the activities list. So, I'm Faraz, and I am the co founder with Let's Unbound, and I am genuinely excited to guide you through this today. Yeah, hello, hi. I guess you can hear me again. There was a problem with my Zoom itself, so I'm just restarting the screen share. Right. I think you guys can re-see my screen now. So as I was just saying that for the last people who had joined us in the last sessions, they had known about the fact that we are doing a common application series, which started across with the common app description itself, and we then slowly moved this into the SAT series, and today we're looking into the common application activities list. And as a lot of you guys would be aware that the activity list is available in various platforms, and also the people who joined us last couple of sessions have also gotten a vague understanding of the different application platforms that are there available in America. Now, what we'll be doing today, we will be going a little bit in focus with the common application activities, but at the same time, we'll be also giving you as much as information possible when it comes across to those various different platforms. So by the end of the session, you'll know how to present your efforts with clarity, confidence, and strategy, whether you're applying via the Common App, UC system, MIT system, or even the Texas Apply system. So clear your distractions, open your notes, and let's get ready to rethink how you can showcase your impact. And as always, we will have the live Q&A at the end. And just repeating that for the same purpose, please use the chat box to flag any technical issues along with questions for the Q&A. So if there's any problem, please do flag it across to Usha, who will then in turn voice it out to me in the session itself, where I could just go ahead and resolve the problem. Now, before we move in to the detailed aspects of the common applications activities, let me introduce you to the organization that is hosting the event. So Let's Unbound began with a focus on skill building, empowering elementary and middle school students with STEM, life skills, and mentorship. As these students progressed to high school, they started seeking college admissions guidance, and that's where we listened. We evolved our services to seamlessly integrate storytelling through applications into our already well-established mentoring programs. By combining personalized learning, skill development, and strategic admission support, we now guide students from their early academic years to top global universities. Today, we have impacted more than 4,000 students across 25 countries, delivering over 125,000 hours of expert mentoring. Our commitment to excellence has earned us 4.9 out of a 5 global rating. We are proud to have partnered with organizations as Harvard Students Agencies and Arizona State University Prep Digital, ensuring that the students we work with receive a world-class educational experience. At Let's Unbound, we don't just prepare students for exams, we really prepare them for life. Now, moving to our founders, Amol and Nishant, just one second. Yeah, moving back to our visionaries, our founders. Amol, on your left, you can see him. He's a serial entrepreneur, educational visionary with experience at Tata, Exceed, India's largest edtech platform. Amol has helped scale and be impactful at school solutions across 2,000 and in 6 countries, impacting over 250,000 students himself. He's known for his ability to blend business thinking and with on-ground school realities, and has been instrumental in helping startups from IIT Bombay and beyond succeed in the educational space. On the right, you can see Nishant. Nishant is a mentor, educator, and the brains behind many of the learning pathways we'll share today. With 14 plus years of experience across academy and industry, he has counseled more than 10,000 students and designed curriculum solutions from K-12 to executive MBA programs. He's an alumni of SP Jain, a top-rated teacher, and a proud mentor of change under Atal Innovation Mission Niti Aayog. Together, their combined experience and vision have shaped the approach we bring to college counseling, personalized, practical, and future. I'll just now quickly give you a quick introduction about myself. So, I have been within the aspect of counseling for the last 12 years. I started within consultancy in automotive industry and then moved over to banking and finance with Standard Charter and Citibank. I've also worked with organizations as Crimson and Added Education. So, both of them are international players when it comes to admission with a very strong focus to US and UK market. That's more about my own introduction. So I'll now just move across to the whole session that we have, planned this across. I have decided to divide our approach into 4 different aspects. We'll start across with the application platform itself. We'll look at the narrative that a US admission officer looks to you and I. We'll be looking at the components, the weightages, the different platforms that are available there and their own activity list. We will then move across to the activity list itself, where we want to see why do these activities matter, the common types of activities, and what really makes an activity impressive, and how do you build an impressive activity. We always move across to our approach and resources that we would be sharing towards the end of the session. So without further ado, we will firstly move into what are US admission officers typically looking across for. Now, to understand this, there had to one primary understanding that needs to be created, and this is those people who are joining us not from the previous 2 sessions. A US admission officer is largely looking for your profile. The reason for that is the declaration of majors is not a mandatory aspect within the application itself. So overall narrative of the admission largely remains true to your profile, because at an average 30 to 50% students don't declare the majors to an admission officer. So through which he has got no understanding, how would he be giving you an admission, which is purely based on the skills that you have shown within the major that you'd like to pursue. So with that not being present, the overall profile is always judged for the personality that you're showing across. And in this case, what they look for is a well lopsided profile. And a well lopsided profile is which is a student that participates these different assets, but at the same time has got an extreme interest strength in one of those specific areas or in a multiple of them. For example, you could be just participating on music and have an extreme strength when it comes to an aspect around sports, or could be extremely good when it comes to fine arts. So it all totally depends student by student what kind of profile or what kind of in depth they're looking at. But the overall aspect has always been that they will be looking for an area or expertise. There will be some aspects that we go on to show interest and show a lot of hours being spent on those specific activities. How do you submit an application on the platform? I'm just using the common application to give you a quick understanding, and then we move on to the applications itself. And again, for the ones that has joined us the previous sessions, they do understand what I'm talking about. You have the academic sections that have got the SAT, SAT, grade 12 scores, transcripts. Along with that, you also do have your 10 activities, the point of conversation that would be, done across today here itself. And these activities, go into various different aspects. They'd be looking at, exactly what you've been doing with with, let's suppose, in usage, create that differentiation. You can see the common application has got 10 activities. In terms of usage, you get to list up to 10 activities across four categories, in which you talk about volunteering, work experience, academic programs, and extracurriculars. MIT, on the other side, only asks you for your top four, but lets you go deep, almost 200 words in each. UT Austin usually allows a resume upload to give more space beyond just the character limits. So that's just a quick touch up of what major topic that we'll be discussing across. After you submit your 10 activities, the other most important document becomes the personal statement. So now from those 10 activities, you move into something more deeper, your personal statement, this 650 essay in the common application, or the personal insight questions, the PIQ in your UC gives you those activities. It's often said your personal statement grows out of your activities list. So today's session is also just a build up to the next session, in which we will be taking up personal statement into an extreme detail. Now, to differentiate with the other universities as well, MIT asks series of short answer essays instead of one long personal statement. And applied Texas, used by UT Austin, has its own essay prompts like topic A, which often centers around your identity or environment. Moving from there, the next set of documents which are written by the student and submitted are your supplementary essays. So after that, as I've just said, after your common app personal statement comes your college specific essays. These are where your personal narrative starts to align with your college's narrative. So if your personal statement is about curiosity or social impact to tech, you're applying to UC Berkeley's EECS program. This is where you show how that interest fits into the offering and culture. So now the documents that are all interlinked: academics, activities, personal statement, and college essay, forming a cohesive, evolving chain. From there, we would then move across to the letters of recommendation, then which is that one piece of that puzzle of the whole application that you will not be writing. Your letters of recommendations, ideally, you submit your teacher's recommendation, and here's the magic: a strong LOR should be so specific and personal, you could read it without student's name and still know been typically written across for. So these are your overall documents that are, submitted with the common application. And I have said that, there are a lot of different, platforms that are typically looking across at, and, that's how it would be, typically used. And in different platforms, you could be doing a slight change. And I have just explained you those slight changes that are there in those various platforms. Now, if you look into those important datelines, your application start by 1st of November, and that's your early application cycle, moving to 1st of January, which is for regular application cycle, and the results are normally by January till April. Now, this is that one part that I wanted to show you. How does an admission officer look, how you would be looking at that admission process. Now, moving back to the US application in terms, looking at from the admissions point of view, this is just to give weightages to the different aspects of the application itself. The academics hold 40%, where the extracurriculars and the 10 activities, the dollar session today will be accounting for 30% of this whole process. The next 30% is your actual personal statement, the essays and the letters of recommendation. So if you see today as a activity of just 10 factors that you need to write in, it's a very heavily weighted component, and that's the prime reason we have decided to treat this completely as a session on its own. So now, without further ado, we'll be just moving across to how, do these universities look at this crucial part about your university application activities list, and how different universities and platforms would be asking for it. Whether you're applying through the Common App, Apply Texas, the University California system, or directly to schools like MIT, you'll see that while the game is the same, showcasing who you are outside in the classroom, the way each university asks for it can be very different. Some gives you, let's say 10 slots. Some may ask you for your top four. The others list up to 20 activities across different categories. In this webinar, we'll break that down clearly with real example, platform-specific formats, and tips how to build a standout list, even if you're just starting across in grade 9. So let's get started. And the first things that we will be looking across is the activities list across the platform. Now that we understand what admission officers are really impact, leadership, and authenticity, let's really talk about where and how actually going to show all of that. This slide breaks down the activity sections across all major platforms. And as you'll see, while the goal stays the same, the format changes significantly. Starting across with a common application, this is what most students use. You can list up to 10 activities with 15 different characters for description and a short field for your role or position. It's tight. It's got to be writing very concisely. Focus on what you did, how you led, and what impact you had. The next one is UT Austin. They accept both Apply Texas and the Common Application, and you can usually include 5 to 10 activities. The big plus here is that you can also upload a resume, which means you're not limited by character counts. You can go into more detail if it's relevant. The third one that you can see is the University of California system, which is extremely different from the Common App. They don't use the Common application at all. Instead, they have their own application that allows 20 activities, but divided into four separate categories. So you got volunteer, you got paid work, you got academic enrichment, and you've got other activities, each entry giving you approximately 350 characters. So you have more space, but the categories limit how you organize your list. And finally, MIT only asks for four activities, but they give you around 200 words each. So they expect depth. They want to see creativity, curiosity, and long-term interest. This is less about how many things you have done and more about how you really think and how in depth you're willing to invest in any activity. So here's the takeaway. Even though all platforms want to understand who you are beyond academics, the way they ask and the space that they give you is very different. Knowing these differences really help you to shape your activity list in each format rather than trying to copy paste the same version every day. Now, just move on to why do these overall characteristics really matter? Why do these activities matter? So that now that we have already seen the different application platforms and how they differently ask for your various activities, the common app 10 entries to the UC 20 categories, or the ones of MIT's deep dive into just four. Let's now just step back and ask ourselves that actual real question: do these activities matter so much? Uh, Point number one, US colleges don't just look at grades. This is the of holistic admissions. Academics are essential, no doubt. Transcripts, test scores, and GPA reflect your academic readiness, but they're not the whole story. In fact, for most of the top schools, your activity stays weigh just as much, sometimes even more. Once you have cleared the academic bar, I normally tell students this is the foundations. Academics do matter, but they have just one piece of the puzzle. Colleges
Hello.
receive tens of thousands of applications. Uh, yeah, hello.
Hey, hi, Faraz. I guess the screen
Hello,
has
Usha.
been frozen. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, is this, do you see why activities do matter on the screen?
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. Why do activities matter?
Yeah, yeah, that's what we're discussing. Why do they actually matter?
Sure.
So that's, as I was saying, academics are essential. But no doubt, your transcript, scores, GPA reflect that, aspect I was just saying. Now, going back, colleges receive tens of thousands of applications from students with strong grades. What they're really trying to find out, who are you beyond these specific numbers? Now, the other one that you also need to look across, point number two, they want to know who you are beyond that classroom. Here's where your personality, values, direction begin to show. Activities are the first sign of who you are when no one is telling you what to do. They show what excites you. Where do you choose to spend your time? Just one second. Sorry. They really tell you where you should be largely doing your work, what really sticks with you, how often do you really want to take ownership or solve problem or lead something. Sorry, just one second. I'll just put my session on. Just got a different call. Give me a second. Yes. So I'm sorry, I was just getting another call on my phone, which is causing a disturbance here. So this section of the application is really your chance to tell your story through actions. This is your chance to show your not just your scores per se, but your overall narrative. And this is where, for example, if you're in violin or if you're running a social campaign or doing a coding project or even tutoring your cousin whose week can become very much meaningful if it is gone through that right kind of reflection, if it goes through that right kind of impact. Now, point number three, activities show a list. Now, I want you to pause and highlight each of the four boxes, either with your cursor if you're, let's say sharing your screen, or as ever you're doing it. Leadership, this doesn't always mean being the club president. It could mean taking initiative. So that's that first part that I'm referring to. So keep your cursor there, have that thought in terms of leadership. What have you done in that part? Can you think of a way where you have taken that initiative? Have you set a direction? Have you influenced others, even in small spaces? Now, moving it across to initiative, this is something about, starting something new, creating a blog, launching a community project, writing a book. These really show that self-drive, something colleges really deeply value. Now, move your cursor now to the third point, the passion. Are you doing thing because you really care about it, not because it's a simple check item? Passion shows in how long you've really stuck with something and how far you've gone to explore it. Now, the fourth part that you really need to move across and think, it's your impact. What changed because of your involvement? Did you help someone? Did you solve a problem? If even if it was just five people, but impact really does matter. This is what colleges are actually looking for. Who you are, what you really care about, and what you have done with that. Now, closing this across in terms of why do activities matter, this is the shift of what you submit, like activities and essays, into why it matters and why do colleges pay such close attention, right? So that's the shift that you're talking. And now that we understand the why, let's get into the what. What actually counts as an activity? And how do you structure them so they resonate with the admission officers? So I'm not giving this division in terms of saying just for the common application or just for a specific platform. We will now be moving on to the different types of common application activities, but just divided into two separate headings, one being the academic activities, the other being the extracurricular. So now just quickly moving across to the extracurricular activities, but much more in the academic aspect. You can now see on my screen, you could be looking across at the academic clubs. This is one of the most obvious. So let's say clubs like a maths club, a science club, or an economic forum. These are classic academic activities. But what matters is what you did in them. Did you participate regularly? Did you help organize an event? Did you tutor peers? Did you lead the team? Were you the person who actually initiated the club? So it's not the name of the club, but the action and impact that you have had personally on it. Moving on to that second part, the research projects. This includes independent research, science fair submissions, mentorship programs, or even initiatives, right? The key is to show that you have gone beyond what's taught in the class to explore something on your own with depth. This is a huge asset for students, applying to research focused schools like MIT, U Chicago, or UC Berkeley. The third one, equally important, and whether it's a formal internship at a startup, helping out your family business, volunteering with an NGO, starting up an NGO, or shadowing someone in a lab, all of this counts. It doesn't need to be a fancy brand name. What matters is what did you contribute, what did you put across as an impact, and very, very importantly, what did you end up learning? Now, another thing you could be, looking across courses. A lot of students forget this one. If you've taken an online certification on Coursera or edX, completed a course like Harvard CS50, or even taken AP courses that your school doesn't offer, all of those independent academic initiatives, they show the right kind of self-discipline and the self-motivation that is required to be putting across in this application itself. So what really counts as an activity, it can move across in any hemisphere of the academic realm. The only aspect that, which is not in this part of extracurricular academics are your actual school scores or your SAT exam. APs at times also does form part of your academic activities. For example, if you're in an Indian board and you're applying for a medical seat, you are at times required to do 5 APs as a minimum criteria. And let's suppose if you're an IB or an IGCSE student or A-level student, in that case scenario, your APs is not something which will be looked at as an academic aspect, but it will form part of your extracurricular activities under the heading of academic activities. So it's very important to really understand the differentiation between, let's say, your academic activity versus your extracurricular activities subheaded into academic again. So that's the ones that you could, typically look across while you'd be creating those 10, 20 different activities. Now, moving quickly to your non-academic activities. Now that we have looked at the first part of the puzzle, this is the second part of that puzzle, the non-academic activities. This is where your personality, your passion, the creativity really comes through. And colleges love seeing this side of you too. So let's try to go by category by category. One of the most important ones, and you can see I've just put it right up there, it is community service, from organizing NGO efforts to teaching underprivileged students or participating in cleanup drive. This reflects the empathy and civic responsibility. It's not just about hours, it's about impact and intention. Also, do remember, not many of the categories that I'll be moving now further down into will be looked as on that mandatory level as community services typically looked across at. You could see things as creativity or performance art or sports. It totally depends on the, inclinations or the bend of the students' mind. But when it comes to community service, and that was the reason that I've really put it up right on top, every student needs to show how are they willing to or how are they able to contribute back to the community that they belong from. Now, moving across to the other aspects, creative arts, painting, graphic design, digital art, philosophy, photography, these are amazing ways to show your creative side. And yes, if you have been consistent, colleges do consider them as serious activities. Now, moving across performance arts, whether it's dance, theater, spoken word, or band performances, it shows communication, stage presence, and confidence. So if you've performed or competed or created something original, do remember to include it. Now, moving across to aspects of sports, again, it doesn't need to be everything doesn't need to be on national level, and that's one of those primary misconceptions that I've had with a lot of students that I've worked with. Do say that I may not be mentioning sport because I haven't gone on to play national level sports at that on that specific, let's say, football or cricket. So it really doesn't matter. Participation in school teams, club tournaments, or even consistent training in the sport shows discipline, it shows teamwork, it shows stamina, all the right kind of characteristics that the actual admission officers looking out for. Now, moving on to other parts as public speaking. So you need to think of MUNs, debates, TEDx talks, elocutions. These show leadership, articulation, and persuasion skills, all valuable in both humanities and even STEM
Hello.
profiles. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, I guess the
Hello. Yeah,
screen was
Usha.
again frozen. Yeah, I guess your screen is frozen.
Uh, what can you see on my screen, Usha?
I can see common types of activities.
Can you see non-academic activities?
No.
Do you see community service?
No.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, now it's there. I can see non-academic activities.
Sure. Sorry, thank you for
Yeah.
that heads up. So
Thank
these were those various points that I was actually mentioning across. What's happening is that between the shifts, sometimes the slide doesn't change across. Now, just to recap everyone, right, the points that they may be a little bit confused by. So that's a community service that I was just talking you across on the creative arts points that I really put across with performance arts and sports. Now, moving across from your passion projects and competitions, this is one of my favorites, especially the passion products. Anything self-initiated, it can be something very small as just a blog, a YouTube channel, a podcast, a startup, or a social campaign. It all counts. These really stand out because they show ownership and creativity. Now, moving across to another various important part, competition overall, right? Whether it's just your Olympiads, hackathons, business pitch events, or case study competitions, these really speak about your problem solving skills and ability to perform under pressure. Now, there are also other things that you could largely look at: online gaming, unique hobbies, almost anything under the sky can be counted here. So, if you really wonder, does this count? Ask yourself, was I consistent? Did I care? Did I grow? If the answer is yes, so my answer to that would be it will definitely count. Now, I'll just quickly move on to the next part of the presentation. What really makes an activity impressive? So these are some basic 5 points that you could largely look across at, which one would be doing that comparison between depth and breadth. But before we get into all of these aspects, just a quick understanding, what really does it. So it's not about how elite an activity sounds. So I think that's one of those first things that I want to talk about. It's not about how many certifications that you have, a second very strong point. It's really about the substance behind your work, the thought, the growth, the drive, and how clearly those things have come together through to the reader. And for top colleges, what they're really scanning for is something called intellectual vitality. And before I move, into this part again, looking into those five, I just want to quickly show you this, note that I have got from an Harvard admissions officer, in which he says intellectual vitality, and I'm just paraphrasing for you, it is something which is easier to identify rather than to define, as it takes various forms. Just by doing a lot of APs and college courses and long term papers, it does not guarantee the active enjoyment or the engagement in the learning process, nor is it distinctive in their pool. So, do remember when you're thinking across that I will do a research paper and that may become a reason that I may be admitted, you are on the wrong side. You may be the only kid doing a research paper in your school, but surely you're not going to be the only student doing a research paper within the pool of application that, for example, Harvard would be receiving. And at the same time, just by doing activities, a lot of them doesn't show enjoyment and engagement. And that's that part where I've been constantly, really pushing it across, that you need to be giving a lot of time. You need to be giving a lot of engagement to this, starting these activities as early from grade 9, 10 and possible, so you could show that active enjoyment and engagement in the learning process. You need to be showing someone who has assumed significant responsibility of their own learning process, show maturity and self-discipline in fulfillment of a project, often well beyond the limitations of a school assignment. So before we, go back into that whole area of what really makes an activity impressive, it was very much important that I given you a very live example or a very live statement from an admissions officer discussing over intellectual vitality. So it's not really about how smart you are, but how you have really used your smartness, how you've really used that potential that you have. So let's now walk through the 5 qualities that make an activity from coding to cooking being impressive in the eyes of an admission reader is the primary aspect. So now, firstly, within depth versus breadth, most students feel pressure to do everything, to join 10 clubs, to take 6 online courses, to show variety. But here's the truth: colleges don't want too much variety. They also want to see a little bit of depth. And that's where they always tell you that you've got an upper ceiling of 10, but it doesn't mean that you need to just go across and put 10th just for the reason of it. You need to put as many as possible to show variety, But at the same time, depth is also going to be extremely important. They really want to know, did the student immerse themselves within that aspect they're talking? Did they really care enough to keep them going at it when it really got difficult? And when it got difficult, what it means, when your exams came in, when your 10th exams came in, when your 11th exams came in. And I've seen it with a lot of students, they drop their, courses, they drop their activities just at that whim because it's getting extremely difficult. A student, for example, spend 1 year building a database of all stray animals in the neighborhood, tagging feeding schedules, and then linking it to Google Maps, even though it wasn't for a school assignment. Now, that's the depth you're talking about. That's the kind of ownership that we're trying to take. And that's a five that, everyone is typically looking across for. So the admission officers really want you to say what want this, that the student didn't just touch the topic, they lived it. Now, initiative, intellectual vitality is all about self-motivation. So ask yourself, did I build something that didn't exist before? Did you really start a club at your school, organize a speaker series on topics you really cared about? Or, for example, created a newsletter, website, or an app that solves a real problem? That example of the stray animals that I just gave across. So here's a real secret. Initiative is really convenient. It's inconvenient. That's what makes it impressive. When you step outside the bounds of what school expects and go after an idea anyway, that's when colleges pay attention. A student who launched a podcast to interview, let's say, frontline workers during COVID, just out of curiosity with no guidance, that's initiative. And that's what intellectual vitality looks like on actual paper. Now, moving to leadership, college cares really about leadership. And if you look at an institute like Harvard, they really make it core of the theme that they're going to be applying for. So you don't have to be the head boy or the club president. You have to be someone who guides others towards clarity. Doesn't need to be the school captain, doesn't need to be the football captain to do that. Solves problems that no one else sees and really steps up to fix them. Creates a system, motivates action, and normally improves the whole process around them. So you look at the charge, you took charge because you couldn't help, but care for that various aspect. For example, a student noticed that juniors were struggling with lab reports, so she created a simplified handbook that mentioned them every Saturday. That's leadership. No title needed, just impact. The fourth point, recognition. Now, while recognition is essential, it amplifies your story. It tells colleges that outside world, that tells the colleges that the outside world that you saw or what you did, it really did matter. This could be an award, a newspaper mention, a competitive program where you were selected for, or even a teacher mentioning and nominating you without being asked. So be careful. Recognition is the result, it's not the goal. What intellectual vitality readers want you to see in the student is followed an idea with discipline and creativity so well that others went up to take notice. That what really makes it stand out. Even a quiet project like writing articles on quantum computing, for examples, that gained more than 1,000 readers on Medium, on that specific medium, that's kind of recognition that proves intellectual engagement. Now, moving across to the last one, longevity. This one matters more than students actually realize. Colleges are not impressed by last minute projects. And that was that part when I was talking about intellectual vitality, of that engagement and enjoyment, of how long have you gone there, how much longevity that you have shown. Longevity really shows maturity, self-discipline, and that you really stuck with something long enough to get better at it. But even more than duration, they are looking for evolution. Did you grow within the activity? Did you move from, let's say, a participant to a team member to a mentor or a leader? Did your understanding really deepen around it? Did your goals change as you learned more? That's the story that colleges will remember. In terms of intellectual vitality, you're really showing that I'm not doing this for college. I'm doing this because I care, because I have got that enjoyment in this activity, and colleges just happen to get the benefit of that side of the story. So the final aspect here, so whether you are talking about a YouTube channel, a tutoring project, a maths research paper, or even a baking blog, you can frame it powerfully if you can show depth, initiative, leadership, recognition, and longevity. Also, the kinds of tries to helps you to understand which are the activities that you can show. And when you combine that with signs of intellectual vitality, those 4 points that I said, you really show that you have been taking responsibility of your own learning, exploring ideas deeply, even without being told, experimenting creatively just because you're curious. That's when you move from being a strong applicant to a must admit applicant. And that's that part that I really, wanted to focus across and push across in terms of what really makes an activity, that much impressive. Now, it's very much important that we again look into this one part of why start early. So I'll just give it a second because I've seen that if I don't wait, my slides don't change. So I'm sure it would have gone up by now. So, all right, we have just seen what makes an activity really stand out, that depth, initiative, leadership, recognition, and longevity. But here's the hard truth. You can build those things, almost getting closer to the admissions. If you want to stand out in your application by grade 12, the real work will have to start later. You can try to create and you can try to show all of that, but the genuinity behind all of those aspects starts to take tries to take a hit. Now, what's the reason behind why you need to start early? So let's just take some time and go through these four very specific and powerful reasons as per me. Intellectual vitality, takes time. We have spoken about intellectual vitality. It's the hidden metric that elite colleges use. It's not just about how well you do in school, it's about how alive you are within your mind outside the school using those skills. But here's the thing, intellectual vitality doesn't just show up in a week, it builds over time. Reading books that weren't assigned, running side projects that no one really asked for, digging into ideas just because you're curious, and largely failing and going again and again on that same path. If you really want to start early, you have time to explore without pressure. You're not chasing deadlines, you're really following curiosity. And that's when real learning happens, and that's when it actually begins. Students who begin exploring, let's say, an interest in grade 9 have time to develop original ideas by the time that they've hit grade 10, grade 11. They don't just say, I like biology. They say, I've spent the last 18 months researching antibiotics resistance, and here's what I've discovered. Here's what I have learned. That's what really separates a good applicant from a great one. Now, moving to the second part, recognition isn't instant. Let's be honest, recognition does matter as much as we say it's only part of the process and not the final result, but it does take time for you to get. It's not everything, but as I've also said, it really does give a good amount of credibility. At the same time, takes a lot of time to build a following. So, for example, following on a podcast will take time for you to get the right kind of followers. Getting traction for a website, having results for a community campaign, submissions for project for competitions, media coverage for, let's say faculty recommendations, and many deadlines for awards, summer programs, research mentorship. They normally take, they're close to 6 to 12 months before these applications go out. So if you start late, you might have to even go through a great effort, but at the same times, you may not have a lot of good outcomes to really show for it. So starting early gives your work the runway it needs to be seen, tested, refined, and shared. Colleges don't award or reward last minute excellence. They reward sustained contribution. And that's that whole part. Recognition won't be coming across in an instant level. Moving to the third part, initiative needs space apart from time. We talked about initiative earlier, building something from scratch, but initiative takes more energy. It takes even more up sometimes. So if you want to launch a nonprofit, publish a research paper, let's say create a youth run app, organize a TEDx event, or build a social movement on Instagram, you will need time to, for example, validate your idea, find a mentor, get feedback, fail, and also course correct, scale it up again. So starting early will really give you that margin to build something real, not just something that looks good on paper. And colleges know this difference. They can tell when something or someone has just rushed through it, and can really tell when it has taken its right time to curate it through. Finally, consistency shows maturity. Here's the final piece, your timeline really, on your timeline, which matters. Admission officers don't just look at what you did, they look at when you did it, how long you stuck with it. A student who has been tutoring underprivileged kids, every Saturday since grade 9, or a student who turned, let's suppose, in their grade 10 science fair project into a 2-year research paper, or a student who turned their blog into a pub book by grade 12. That shows consistency, that shows maturity. It proves that it isn't just a phase, or it isn't just one part about you, it actually what who you are as a person. In admissions, time is the trust. If you've been doing, something consistently over the years, the reader believes it's real. And here's the line that I want all of you to remember. Students who start, let's say, early to build depth. Students who wait scramble for breath. It's a very specific part. I'll just repeat that for you. Students who start early really end up building depth. Students who wait will always scramble for breath. Now, the final thought of this is, when should you start? Starting grade 9 is ideal. Grade 10 is also strong, but my method always been start now. If you're a student in grade 8, don't try to create up new activities just to impress. Look at the activities that you've already gathered and have already done, and try to understand that which of these can be really taken forward and showcased in the right way. Now, we'll quickly move through with how do you build an interesting, activity. We'll start off a normal one. So begin with an interest. So that's your first thing. This student, the one that I'm just taking as an example, was really passionate about two things, food and social justice. So this is a project about a student getting through and starting a trade fair, and just see how it comes through these various steps. That now the combination might sound very unusual at first, food and social justice, and but for her it made perfect sense. She cared deeply about ethical sourcing and community welfare, and was really her natural starting point. Step two, she linked the school role to a local activity. Rather than wait for an opportunity, she joined the school trade fair committee, which worked promoting ethical sourcing in school cafeteria among students. This gave her real experience, a support structure, and early sense of leadership. Then she expanded the scope. After some time, she realized the work of the committee was limited in reach. She asked herself, how can I take these values beyond the school and reach a wider community? This is where many students stop, but she actually pursued forward. Moving on to the next part, brainstorm project ideas. She started brainstorming. Some ideas included, for example, running a social media campaign, organizing school workshops, and eventually the most exciting one, creating a fair trade festival, a public event brought through various vendors, students, and community members to provide awareness and change. Eventually, this moved on to, let's say, shortlisting and the plan itself to turn that idea into a real project itself. She used tools like SWOT analysis to evaluate the strengths and risks. She set SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And that laid out a week by week action plan. She also created a working budget and started outlining everything she needed. So from permits to, even sound system. So by the time she actually started executing, she had built a solid foundation, and that's how good ideas really turn into impressive activities. Now, moving across into the sixth plan, which is to execute the plan itself week by week. This is, I'm sorry, I just moved into step six itself, which is, executing the plan with her blueprint print ready. She really rolled up her sleeves and got to the work. She split her plan across 6 weeks and delegated outreach, logistics, and fundraising among her team. She reached out to vendors for stalls, applied for permissions, coordinated with school facilities, and recruited volunteers. This wasn't about organizing. This was about problem solving on the go. She faced setbacks. One key vendor, for example, dropped out at the last minute, but handled it. That's initiative under pressure. Admissions teams really love this part because this shows action, not just intention. So that's that one whole thing. You need to execute these plans, and a very important step in this whole process. Moving across, build public presence. She knew the event success also, let's say, deepened on visibility. So she created a simple website using Wix and Instagram with countdowns and speaker events, posters in schools and community centers, an email campaign to teachers and parents, a press release for local news outside. This is not only more promoted event, it also proved that she could communicate, brand, mobilize, all of which are powerful signs of leadership. This is also when activity starts to leave a footprint beyond just your school. Moving across, you need to add a unique element. This is where she really leveled it up. She invited a local business owner who ran an ethical chocolate company as a guest speaker. She also included an interactive art installation where attendees could write pledges about their food choices. This is what made her project memorable. Colleges see hundreds of projects. The one that stands out often includes creative, personal, and community tied element, and it becomes an anchor for a memorable essay. Step 9, launch and document everything. The event finally took place and it was a success, but she didn't stop there. She captured photos, videos, got feedback forms filled, asked for speaker and vendor for testimonials, saved all of this in a Google Drive, and linked it into her resume. Lastly, follow up and reflect. She sent thank you emails to everyone. She hosted a reflection meeting with the team. She wrote a personal blog post about the lessons learned and updated her personal statement. Then she handed over the event playbook to the junior to carry forward. And that is the longevity, turning a one time event into an annual tradition. And that's where that impact becomes also important. This is how an activity becomes a legacy and not just a bullet point and not just a thing used for the admissions for that year. It also shows admissions officer that she was thoughtful, responsible, growth oriented, not just ambitious. So, as a wrap up, that's how an activity goes from passion to project to story and to a real legacy. Each of these 10 steps allowed her to showcase everything colleges are looking for: your initiative, leadership, intellectual vitality, public impact, and reflection. She did not just do an activity, she built a narrative. And that's what really stands out. Now, after giving you an example of how it actually happens, I just want to share you a few examples directly from few of those successful universities that we have gathered from. So this is an example of an actual application being accepted at Harvard University for a student showcasing those activities. So if you see the first example, the math club, this student was not just part of the math club, they were the co-president and treasurer, meaning they took courage, charge, and handled logistics and growth. But it goes deeper. They ran a summer math club for middle school and taught competition level math over 110 students. They weren't just learning, they were sharing knowledge, building community, and leading. They also competed at national level, representing their state in Ohio ARML team, placing in top fifth national, a significant achievement. And most impressively, they grew the club 2x, a clear metric of leadership and impact. At the same time, you can also see the student has been doing this activity since grade 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th. The same kind of thing that you could again look across in the second example. Again, we see leadership. This time as a co-president of the CS club. But what stands out is the depth of engagement. They didn't just code for fun. They taught data structure, algorithms in Java, a college level topic to peers. They captained their team in the ACSL competition, went on to nationals twice, and also trained others for the USACO and hackathons. The cherry on top, they grew the club membership by 75%. This shows leadership and outreach. And that's the same thing, just in a different aspect, music, right? You might wonder what's music, going to do in a STEM selection. This is a STEM application. That's the whole point. Top schools love to see intellectual diversity. The student pursued a cello and piano with rigor, participating in regional and chamber orchestras and earning RCM Level 9 honors, a highly respected certification. They weren't just hobbyists, they reached a level of excellence that matched their academic achievement. So the key takeaway here is these aren't just laundry list. Each activity tells a story in depth of ownership and of excellence. That's what you want, to go beyond doing and show that you have built something, led something, or have really elevated something. Now, just to give you a quick view of, let's say, something within humanities itself. So I suppose my screen would have now gone over to humanities. You can look at the first one, which is around soccer leadership. This is a great example of how sports can become a standout activity. The student wasn't just a player, they captained their club and school soccer teams for multiple years. What stands out is that they achieved varsity status as a freshman, which shows exceptional talent. They were the team's the assistant leader and led their club to undefeated championship season. Leadership, presence, persistence, and excellence under pressure. It all shows up here. And you could see this in those aspects as well. The research one, the second example, the student conducted a research on a global institutions and refugee rights, a topic that reflects both academic depth and moral clarity. They worked with the scope research to analyze real case studies which show they can think like a college student even being in high school. This is the kind of research that speaks volumes in essays, interviews, and activity lists. And you could thus also see with the community service internship, the amount of years, the amount of hours that the student is, typically speaking across, even while you're doing humanities application. Now, just to, fill you up with just a few more. So if you could just have this one. So founded, in New Zealand's second largest young women's network of, approximately 8,000 students, led a STEM and gender equality advocacy, hosted 400 delegate conference, and won 2016 Young Leader Award. Doing this from 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, 5 hours each, 40 weeks a year, and the activity continues of now. So this is how you need to think across in terms of all of these activities. Now I'll just quickly move across to our approach, which is now the third part of the session itself. We have, largely seen while working with parents and students that 93% of them only know seven career choices. Parents and students really struggle with complex university applications. And as we have just gone over that activity list, I'm sure a lot of you people would be here thinking today that, we haven't seen the applications, haven't seen the common application activity list in the right way. As a matter of fact, many of them also do overlook the fact that there's just not one platform that would be used across in this admission itself. There will be multiple platforms that need to be, mastered at. And at the same way, we have seen this part of the counseling as well, that majority of the parents are just not aware of the opportunities that will lie outside top universe. As you can see, it's really personalized, and the same kind of recipe or a blueprint may not always work for everyone. So how do we go around in this issue? We take the input of the student in terms of a psychometric test, in terms of personality, interests, and all these paths to understand what the student is largely looking for. Move into college counseling, we help you build your profile, various skills around it, and then move into the application and admissions guide, conclude with the visa and stay assistance. If you see how we take a typical timeline, we start working with students in early ages, and as you know, we have spoken across what are those benefits. We work with someone in grade 9, we help them understand their interest, help them understand their strengths, where we make, let's say, join clubs or courses or start new competitions in grade 9. We also do make work on their personal statements and letters of recommendations right from grade 9 itself. So by the time that they're hitting grade 11, there's substantial work that has already gone across in trying to understand your strengths. So choosing the subjects is becoming a factor of your own strengths, weaknesses, rather than just deciding by the jobs available outside. So within 11th, we then help in terms of the capstone projects and eventually in terms of the standardized testing, which comes in November, December of your grade 11th, the first attempt, which will run all the way to, let's say, February and March, dependent on the amount of attempts that the student would like to take. Your grade 12th year, in this case scenario, once it starts across the Jan till April, would be the final draft of your personal statement. And this is the time when you initiate the essays, because every year it's between Jan till March when all of the universities do declare the essays. Now, by this stage, we have concluded the personal statement, we move into the essays, and we just start focusing at closing up activities and putting up social media posts, or concluding them with blogs, concluding them with websites, and starting with the application strategy, the last level, in which we'll be looking through the last drafts, making everything ready between your September and October of that application year. So by October, November, you could make your early rounds of application, and then the regular ones go by January. All of the results would be then done between, let's say August to September, and that's where we help decide which are the countries that you should be selecting, and finally the eventual visa work. Just to put all of our activities down into one single slide, our work is really divided up into three separate pillars: academics and test preps, profile building, and then eventually admissions prep. Now, moving quickly to the success stories, as we do always share in our sessions. This is a story of a kid that I had directly worked with, had a very strong list of extracurricular activities. For example, he was a national level basketball player. He founded an NGO to combat food insecurity and organized impactful book collective drives. He was a talented solo singer and performed at various charity events. And at the same time, he had a very solid score of SAT of 1550 and a grade 12 result above 95%. Adding one part to his profile, that he had also won at the most prestigious essay competition at Oxford. So a lot of academic activity, even being extracurriculars, backed up by those academic grades required to get through with this process. The same kind of a thing that you could see with another example of ours, a student who went into Rice University, where he had chaired a Model United Nation, after excelling roles in delegation and press secretary and communications head. So these are the kind of work, the kind of profile that you need to be showing across, where you're rising through different ranks, where you're becoming a better version of yourself in that fashion. Now, moving to the last part of our session today, the resources, and as we always, putting it across in all of our sessions at the end, that you can be joining us for all of these various different masterclass sessions. The session that we'll be now conducting next week will be on personal statement. How do you really build the right kind of personal statement? So continuing on with our common application series, where we have done this SAT, and today we have just gone over the 10 activities. Our next masterclass session would be really focused around the personal statement itself, and then we will be eventually moving on to essays and letters of recommendation, and concluding this whole common application series, in which you'll be able to understand all of the various different US platforms, and would be able to understand how you could go across with there. And as an entry, the next session would be conducted between a top Ivy League student, as we sometimes do bring them across to give a direct view from the horse's mouth directly of a student who has made it into a top university. So we are always consistently conducting such master classes. Would request you guys to join them across if you're really looking for some meatier and substantial understanding of this topic. Now, moving to the next part, we also do share a lot of information on these various platforms. This is the College Crest newsletter. I'll just share you across this one link for one of our letters that we have written in terms of the lists themselves. So just give me 1 second. Right. So it's just shared onto the chat. You could use this link to get onto the platform itself, or you could use the QR code at the bottom to log into the platform to get as much as information on different parts of the whole US and international admissions as a whole. You could also use these two QR codes. This one here is for the podcast that we do create with a lot of our students of ours, giving a very first-hand view of admissions and education abroad. Moving to the second part, this is the community that we have created with WhatsApp with like-minded peers, and it also keeps on giving you updates about the new sessions, the new alignments, the new opportunities that we're getting consistently within the admissions realm. At the end of all of our sessions, we do give you this opportunity to register for the SAT diagnostic. You could, just scan on the QR here. We could help you across in that part and really help you get that right kind of a digital SAT score. This is the last slide of my presentation. So you could just scan here to register. All of those people who will be registering would be getting a complete one-piece document highlighting all of the points that I have discussed today. So you could just keep it across as a record. So do remember to register on this QR code so I could be sharing all of those various aspects to you. And at the same time, we would be able to give you a very good one-on-one view over the mission, over this activities list as a part. So that's it from my side today. I would just be using the chat section to, understand, are there any questions, right, that you guys would be having? So just give me a second. I'm just on the chat section itself. So if there any specific questions that you would like to ask me, just do make sure that you drop it across onto the chat now. Right, so I assume that there are no questions as of now. So we would be now concluding the session. I'm just giving a last couple of more seconds for all of you guys just to use this QR code on your screen. So, you could register for the one-on-one and we could share the document, the post event document with you guys. Thank you. So just closing the share itself. Thank you for attending the event. I hope the event was valuable to all of you guys. Thank you.